got one. Got second. They have no idea I'm above them, bro. I killed him with that last drill shot. Alright, today I'm finally coming out with my in-game build, my ultimate in-game build for Dune Awakening. And in this video I still want to talk about the dynamics between the abilities and why I use them, and also the different things that I switch out between for certain builds and why I do so. So to start off with, I want to start with the abilities and the techniques and the trees, and then we'll jump onto the weapons, the armor, and some of the other more utility stuff with some general breakdowns of the build. So if you saw at the start of the clips, I'm more of a ranged focused player. This is from previous games like New World and Once Human, where I predominantly focused in long range specialization, but I always have the option to resort back to melee should I require it, which is very important in Dune Awakening, as melee currently is one of the meta builds, and this is definitely not a meta melee build. This is more of a mix. You have the option to go meta melee, but you also have the option to stay long range and snipe and deal a significant amount of damage, provided you hit your shots. To start off with, we're going to jump over the abilities, which are Sugar Wire is used in both of my kits. As we all know, it is one of the best mobility abilities in the game. Also, for staggering enemies, it provides a free entry for melee and ranged attacks, making it very strong for pretty much every kit in the game. Next to that, we have the Retaliate ability. Now, this is for my melee side of equips, and I have two equips which we will go over. This is the Close Quarters kit, and then we'll go over the Ranged kit. They're both spec'd into, so you don't need to respec for this kit to work. You have all of the abilities instantly available to you, so you can instantly hot swap without needing to respec. That was sort of the goal of this, is to min-max my skill point spend, so you could do both when you needed to. Because being able to instantly switch between both trees or both equips when necessary is extremely important in this game. So again, Retaliate. Retaliate is effectively Repost if you've ever played New World, as it effectively deflects an attack that is coming towards you, so such as a melee attack, which makes it very strong, and does a counter attack that applies a burst bleed attack and a burst bleed over time, making it a very strong ability that a lot of melee kits currently use, and of course I'm going to have that on my kit as well. Very strong, we're bumping that up as high as we can, very fantastic ability. Next up is the Knee Charge. The Knee Charge is extremely powerful, but it does come with one con. It is a little bit hard to hit and can be a little bit annoying to land. So that said, it can deal in a massive amount of damage at level 3, and not only that, it does poise damage. Now, I quickly want to mention the numbers you see on screen and not the actual numbers you'll be dealing in PvP specifically. That is because there is a built-in damage mitigation applied to abilities and base damage across the board in PvP. I don't know how I feel about that, but it is around, from what the numbers people have said, around 40 to 60% depending on the passive or ability when it comes to damage mitigation. So you are just generally dealing a lot less damage in PvP than you would in PvE or on PvE enemies. So it is important to note that as a whole, that while it says 160 poise damage, which is the damage you do through a stagger, which would be through a shield even if they have a holtzman, it is going to be significantly less on a shielded enemy in PvP compared to PvE. That said, it is still one of the strongest abilities in the game because of that poise damage. Poise damage is an important stat in Dune because it does damage through a shield. Poise is stagger, if you didn't know, and that is poise damage, so it is damage through stagger, which is extremely strong, once again, against a Holtzman shield player. Next up, we have the range, actually we'll go over the techniques, why not? So, actually I have the wrong technique equipped here. Let me quickly put the right technique on. So, for the first technique is the Suspensor Dash. The Suspensor Dash is extremely OP because it allows us to do a dash with our power pack instead of our stamina. How this works is whenever you jump and dash, it is going to allow you to drain power, and it effectively allows you to do it a lot, which is very OP, and once again means we don't need to waste stamina on such a crucial part of combat. If you know me, back, especially in the CBT, the stamina costs for everything was kind of a lot, and this sort of helps negate that effect and gives you a bit of a return and a lot more dashes in your combat, in your play, in your in your combat, etc. That is why I really recommend Suspensor Dash for pretty much every build. This again being one of the most essential techniques in the game, in my opinion, as again you are going to get a lot of use out of this without having to waste stamina on dashing. It means you can prioritize using stamina for casting abilities and melee attacks. Next up is Iron Will, which is located on the Mentat tree as well, actually, funny enough. Iron Will effectively allows us to mitigate Bene Gesserit voice attacks at the cost of stamina. So let's say a player is going to hit you with an ability, with a voice ability, you will lose 20 stamina, which is a significant amount, but that means you won't get CC'd or crowd controlled by your opponent using a Bene Gesserit voice ability, making it very strong, and if not one of the second most important techniques in the game for PvP. Next up is the disciplined breathing. This is also very, very strong, as while we do have a lot of stamina now because we don't need to use it for dashing with Suspensor Dash, we're going to be using a lot of stamina for casting abilities, especially when we're in Spice Prescience and we have reduced cooldowns. It's going to actually burn our stamina faster than we can cast in some cases, depending on the kind of combat you're in, especially in group combat where you're doing a lot of ability spam on repeat. Stamina recovery rate is going to be extremely important, and this ability at level 3, which is located on the Swordmaster tree on the right, tree on the way, is going to be very powerful in getting your stamina back at 20% faster, and every little bit helps, again getting that to level 3. So there is going to be a small switch out here. I'm going to simply switch over to my ranged equips, which again I have both in the tree with all skill points spent to be able to quickly hotspot between the two, as I think that is extremely important. We'll go over the changes once I've quickly dragged them over, as there isn't too many, but it is enough to make the build play significantly different. So to start off with, we're keeping Sugar Wire. Of course, it is pretty crucial for pretty much every build as outlined at the start. But next up, we're using the Assault Seeker. The Assault Seeker is a trooper grenade ability, well, not necessarily a grenade, but rather a throwable grenade that's going to detonate when it reaches the enemy, and it does a significant amount of damage. Not only that, it does damage through shields. This is extremely strong, and something that also the Explosive Grenade does, which is the second ability we applied over the knee kick, which again isn't needed at range. These equips are going to be used for playing medium to long range gunplay. This is when I'm sniping, I'm going to be using these abilities because, again, grenades do a significant amount of damage through shields, making them very, very strong. So, Assault Seeker, effectively a throwable grenade, is going to do up to a whopping 550 damage to a player, but it will only do a percent of that through the shield, and it will do an even smaller percent once again on a PvP player. As we've noted, there is a built-in damage mitigation across the board in PvP. Don't really know why, as in my opinion, PvP fights are already pretty prolonged. With Holtzman shields, I feel like they could probably reduce that built-in 40 to 60% mitigation, but that said, a very strong ability. Next to that is, of course, the grenade, just another explosive that does the same thing. At level 3, this does 490 damage. Again, once again, it will do part of that through the shield, making it very strong. Grenades are also one of the best, or some of the best abilities for interior and indoor combat, specifically labs, ships, or just internal if you're raiding someone and it's an online raid, and there's a sort of a stalemate going on between your GVG experience. So if it's a 5v5, for example, let's say there are 5 enemies inside, 5 enemies outside. It is hard to engage in melee without struggling to identify who's who, because again, this game doesn't have nameplates. We need a way to sort of deal damage, but also not get confused with each other and FF, or friendly fire. Grenades are the perfect way of doing this. Grenade spamming, get all of your guildmates on grenades, spam it in the interior. You don't have to engage with melee, and you'll do a significant amount of damage. A 5-man with grenades is going to be extremely strong, especially chaining them. Next up is going to be the technique we changed. Now, we're still using Suspensor Dash, and we're still using Disciplined Breathing, but I've swapped out Iron Will. Now, while Iron Will is extremely strong and one of the most important passives or techniques, it is not going to be needed at range, because in theory, we shouldn't be getting hit by Bene Gesserit voice abilities if we're a bit off in the distance sniping. We are going to let our melee prioritize that, and they're going to be the ones to engage, while I'm going to be sitting back, waiting for shields to drop and headshotting enemies. You'll see a bit of gameplay in front of you that I got where I waited for my enemies to engage for me, and I took the high ground, took the advantage, and had a perfect opportunity to kill unshielded enemies with my sniper. That is where marksman comes in. It's going to give us a 20% bonus headshot damage at level 3, which is extremely strong, and it's again going to be much more important than Iron Will when we're not getting hit by voice abilities, because we don't need it, right? We're not getting focused by the Bene Gesserit. We're going to be the ones long range, playing it slow, taking out enemies that drop their shields, and they won't expect us. That is the idea of the ranged equips compared to the melee equips. And it's good to have both options built into my kit, so depending on the situation, you can switch. Let's say it's a 1v1, or you're entering a testing station with 2 buddies and you're about to verse another group. That's where the melee kit might come in stronger compared to the range kit. The range kit, in my opinion, is the best GVG kit, while the melee kit is the best small scale kit. Now, I recommend trying both, seeing what you like, and also you don't have to exactly follow my build. You might have preferences in certain areas that you prefer. Now, going over the passives, while we've covered the techniques, while we've covered the abilities for both equips, what passives am I using? On the Trooper tree, I generally pretty much pick up all of the range damage bonuses and buff them to level 3. So range damage on the bottom left tree on gunnery, disrupted damage of course, because we do have a disruptor in our kit, which can be fantastic in certain situations. Scatter damage, this is going to also increase drill shot damage. It's important to note it's not just scattergun, even though it says it is. This will help your scattergun as well, so your drill shot as well. Next up, we just have the durability passives here. These are going to be helpful, especially when you're running tier 6 gear. It is actually a pretty big blow to constantly be dying with high tier gear, because that max durability is going to start creeping in, and you're going to have a lot less use out of your tier 6 gear. So I highly recommend picking up these passives at least at level 1 or 2, so you can get a little bit of repair mitigation and have your gear for longer before needing to replace it. We also have the increased damage for heavy weapons, which is great for flamethrowers, Vulcans, and most importantly, las guns. Las guns in this game are one of the most OP weapons for dealing with vehicles and raiding. Now, of course, you can't use las guns in Dune Awakening on shields, as that is, again, something they had to sort of solve because it would be a little bit OP, but it is still one of the best weapons when it comes to raiding, when it comes to destroying ornithopters. If you have a problem with ornithopters, and this is something I want to mention because I see a lot of people talking about it, all in-game PvP is range or is vehicle combat, which is fundamentally not true. You can easily force ground infantry combat in this game if you have anti-aircraft. We will get onto anti-aircraft weapons later, but most importantly, las guns as well are going to do a significant amount of damage to vehicles. And that is why it is so strong. A lot of people don't know about anti-aircraft yet, and when they do, you are going to see a lot more infantry gameplay, because people are going to be scared about losing their ornithopters, because that is the biggest loss in the deep desert currently. And if you lose your ornithopter, you're stranded and you will lose your entire kit. So people are going to pocket the ornithopters as soon as they see a anti-aircraft weapon such as a launcher come out of the mist, because they do not want to lose such a precious piece of their kit, which is mobility at getting across the deep desert. So that was a bit of a yap there, but it was also very important to mention that anti-aircraft is a very important part of this kit. Now, I didn't pick up the energy capsule for gunnery. Now, I do like this ability, but in its current state, I would not recommend energy capsule. There's a few reasons why I would not recommend energy capsule. Number one, the wind-up animation takes way too long. In my opinion, this ability needs to be buffed so it is more viable. While it does give a nice damage increase, the amount of time that you're popping the capsule, you could have flicked off another 2 shots, which would have equaled that damage increase anyways. So what's the point in using the energy capsule when you could just have shot 2 more times, right? So that is how I feel about it. That's why I don't recommend it in its current state. And if Funcom sees this, hears about this, I highly recommend buffing this ability. Now, I'm sorry if you can't understand all this information and just want to follow the kit. I feel like it's important for me to theorize and give my reasons on why I pick certain things and why I believe it is better than so and so, and at least from my perspective for my kit, why I do certain things the way I do. Jumping over to the middle tree on suspensor training, I use suspensor efficiency. Now this is just crossed over from the suspensor dash here. There's a little bit of a bug on this website. Suspensor efficiency is just going to make it so we have less power drain when we're using power related things, such as our suspensor, which again allows us to hover more, allows us to fly more with our suspensors, which is going to be great, especially at avoiding melee. Your best friend as a ranged player is flying with the suspensor. Melee cannot do jack shit. So we just fly, we pop a grenade. What the fuck are they going to do, right? You can constantly do that on rotation when kiting with the sugar wire as well, making it a very strong rotation. So I highly recommend having that passive just to back up your suspensor dashes and back up your suspensor flying. On the tactical tree, we pick up, of course, sugar wire at level 1. Now, it's important to mention, why do I go with sugar wire at level 1? Because sugar wire at level 3 is effectively the same. The only thing that you get increased on sugar wire level is range. Why that doesn't matter is because when we use a sugar wire, and if you've seen a lot of people use sugar wire, specifically me, when I use sugar wire, I slingshot myself and then activate my suspensor, and you get a massive amount of momentum that will boost you forward. Now, I am going to show a little bit of clip on screen maybe, but that is going to be far greater than just increasing the sugar wire range. Because you have that slingshot ability, there's no need, it's a waste of skill points. Level 1 is the best for sugar wire. Now next up we have the explosive grenade, of course at level 3, same with the assault seeker. And at the top of the tactical tree we are using our first capstone. This is a prescience or a spice prescience passive. What this does is, it's called reflexive reload, is it means when we are under spice, we will be able to throw a grenade or throw an assault seeker and instantly reload our weapons. Now why this is so strong is when we get the rocket launcher, and I will mention this later, is you can chain this very well. So what you can do is you can throw a grenade, you can shoot your rocket launcher when you're flying over someone, throw a grenade, shoot your rocket launcher, throw an assault seeker, and then it just works. You don't need to reload. It is very strong, a very strong flying combo for dealing with ground enemies, especially melee players are going to fucking hate you when you do this combo. But it's important to note that you can only do this combo when you're under spice presence. But that said, it is a very strong. Getting that instant reload, being able to effectively, throw your grenade, reload instantly, and then shoot again is pretty strong. Now onto the Mentat tree. The Mentat tree, much like the Trooper tree, allows us to get a bunch of different ranged passives. Starting off on the left side, we have to unlock the Sentinel, which is the drone now, the turret now. This can actually be alright, especially at level 3. However, it has been nerfed and is very easy to kill. Bullet or two will basically knock it down and send it out. But in the CBT a long time ago and in the beta, it was a very strong ability, but since has been nerfed a lot. And I wouldn't recommend it in the current kit. Maybe it needs a little bit of buff and it could become viable. But until then, I would not recommend it. And another fact, the Sentinel will also target friendlies that are in your guild if they're not in your group, which makes it a very bad ability for GVG, as it's just going to be basically trolling your team. But we have to pick it up to get to the passives and the techniques I want. So, range damage passives, of course we're going to pick this up. Same with the Jabal Spit Dart one, which is going to increase both our Jabal and Karpov. We don't really use a Karpov in our kit, but you can if you want to. That is personal preference. We also have our technique, our marksman technique at level 3, again giving us 20% more headshot damage. Bottom to the left we have just a couple more repair passives. I've only done level 1 because I don't have enough skill points to effectively expend on these. I would rather save those skill points for more effective things. But at 1 skill point I am going to pick up the level 1 version so we can at least help our durability loss a tiny bit. Now at the top we have another Spice Prescience Capstone. This is Shield Overcharge, and this is what makes that rocket launcher combo I was talking about previously so strong. So combining Reflexive Reload with the Shield Overcharge is going to allow us to create that combo and deplete an enemy shield very fast. So again, we're going to fly in the air with our suspensor. We're going to shoot our rocket launcher. While under Spice Prescience, we're going to throw a grenade, instantly reload our rocket launcher again, and then we can repeat that around 2 times, which gives us a total of 3 rockets instantly without reloading, and 2 explosive grenades on one enemy while using shield overcharge. We're going to make an enemy vulnerable very fast. This is called what I like to call the bomber combo, and I will showcase it in game hopefully soon when I do get my rocket launcher. Now, I still don't have my rocket launcher crafted, but it's going to be a very strong combo. Next up, we have the poison capsule. Wouldn't recommend this in its current state, but again, we just have to pick it up to get to the passives I want, which is more headshot damage, 15% more headshot damage at level 3, which is almost just as strong as the technique, by the way, but that combined with that, we get 35% more headshot damage, which is fantastic for my ranged build or my ranged equips with the Jabala Spit Dart. Then we have Assassin's Shot, which is, again, just more range damage, at the caveat that you have to shoot them in the back. But it is still good, and you might proc it occasionally. Next up is the Tactician tree. Now, we have to pick up all of these abilities just to get to Iron Will, which is kind of annoying. Now, I did pick up the mines, the gravity mine on the left side, as this is an alternate ability for grenades if you want to use it. If you feel safe without Shig White, you could go triple grenades with the gravity mine, which is also going to drain enemies' shields at a faster rate. So this could be a very, very good ability to use as well. Now, I haven't included it on my main equips, but it is an alternate spec that I have added in. Next up is the Planetologist tree. Now, we're really only picking up vehicle repair here, alongside fuel efficiency and fuel efficiency pilot, and they're only at level 1. I would like to have these higher, but it uses a lot of skill points that we could use in other areas, and ultimately fuel costs, you could really just run more fuel cells on you, and same with fuel usage, you could just run more fuel cells on you. Vehicle repair is actually an important one though, because max durability loss does creep in a lot on Ornithopter wings, but again, this video isn't really focused on the Ornithopters themselves. I want to leave that to a separate video. On the Bene Gesserit tree, on the left side, we have the Bindu Sprint at level 3. Now, if you've noticed, I haven't included Bindu Sprint on any of my equips. That's because it is an equip that you will use a lot in mobility situations, but it's not going to be required specifically in PvP. Let's say you're fighting at rocks, or you are fighting in a testing station, or in a shipwreck, or raiding a base, or an online raid, or anything like that. You don't really need Bindu Sprint. It's kind of a waste of an ability slot. But it's going to be fantastic for mobility when you're not in those situations. Specifically aerial combat, it is going to be extremely strong at navigating around and getting out of bad situations when you pocket your Ornithopter. So it is extremely strong for high mobility situations, but other than that, at general PvP, it is just there to basically have as an option. And that's why I put it at level 3. It's very strong at level 3 as it gives you a massive amount of dash. So you can see here the level 3, it is going to have a less stamina drain, which means you get to basically use it for way longer, which is quite strong. And yeah, it has a 2-second less cooldown as well. But Bene Gesserit Bindu Sprint is basically just for mobility, and you'll use that as needed. Next up, I picked up only level 1 of the melee passives. Again, we are focused on ranged in our build, but the moment we do need to use melee, we can have that option. Now, I also picked up the Prana Bindu Strikes, which are very strong, but they are not used in any of my current equips, but they can be substituted in if you like them, because I know a lot of people like these in their melee builds, and they can be pretty good as a stagger and CC option. That said, I don't use them in my equips personally, but they can be useful. On the body control on the far right, we are picking up a lot of important passives here, mainly being the max health on the list on the left at level 3. It gives us 55 more health, which is quite strong. And then on the far right, we also have poison mitigation. So this is going to be very strong with dealing with enemy spit darts. Yeah, if you also hate getting hit by spit darts, this is a passive you might want. So next up, we have just level 1 on healing regen, and then we have level 1 on sunstroke rates, and then we have level 1 on the self-healing traits. I did have to pick up Prana Bindu Stability. I don't really recommend this. I'm not going to be using this, but you could if you like it to get out of staggers faster. Or reduce poise damage, sorry. Last but not least is the Swordmaster tree. Swordmaster, again, we've picked up the Blade passive just again at level 1 because we have run out of skill points. And then we've also picked up Retaliate again for the melee CQC build. pretty OP, pretty fantastic ability. On the far right, we have some of the most important techniques here and abilities. Knee charge at level 3, of course, getting all that poise damage when we land it. Then we have stamina bonus, very, very important. Staying hydrated gives you a massive increase in stamina. And in the middle, we have the disciplined breathing, which is our stamina regen rate. And at the top left, we have the general conditioning, which is going to give us another heap of max stamina. Just in general, no conditionals on this one, so this is a pretty important pickup in my opinion. And across to that is pretty much, yeah, that's the kit. I would say we've covered every tree, and we have again my CQC and range kit. And now we can probably jump onto my main build. So I quickly want to mention that this is also on my website. I have a website for all this if you prefer stuff in text. So we've gone over all of our abilities. We've gone over all of our passives and techniques, the reasons why I use them, and the reasons I don't use certain stuff. Now we'll jump onto the weapons, why I use certain weapons, the armor, why I use certain armor, and of course, last but not least, the utility. Again, I'm going to leave Ornithopters in their own video, as that is kind of its separate mechanic. Aerial combat is a thing in itself. So, to start off with, we have the Static Needle. This is an in-game tier 6 unique rapier that is going to mess with an enemy's power pack when you hit them. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it is very strong. It might be around 10 or 20% of, or 10 or 20 power when you hit someone's power pack, sorry. I can't remember the exact details, but all I know is it's very strong. It's going to be one of the best in-game rapiers you can get, and in fact, in my opinion, one of the best in-game melee weapons. Next up is the Dune Watcher. The Dune Watcher is a very strong, one of the best in my opinion, in-game snipers or spit darts that has a massive amount of base damage. I think it has something like 370 or 350 base damage, and it is a single shot weapon. So while I do like the 5-finger triple shot, which a lot of you guys might be familiar with at tier 5, it has this horrible horizontal spread of a triple shot radius. This is pretty ineffective at sniping, as while it does, I think I'm pretty sure the 5-finger is around 271 base damage. That is split across those 3 shots. So that is divided by 3, which is something like 90 damage per bullet, right? That is across 3 bullets in that horizontal radius, which means beyond 10 meters, where that spread on the 5-finger starts to become more noticeable, it becomes less and less efficient at actually sniping, which kind of sucks. It kind of makes it obsolete at endgame, especially for my playstyle. While the Dune Watcher is very, very strong, as not only is it single target, we can use it from a very long distance and actually hit where we want to hit without having a random spread counteract our aim, basically. So the Dune Watcher is fantastic. It is also going to be a hard blueprint to get. You can get it through the Landsrad vendor if you win the Weapon Imports Decree, or you can get it from testing stations if it is one of the unique blueprints for that week. Luckily, it was the unique blueprint in week 2 of Dune Awakening, which means I got a bunch of them. Now, it is not in the current rotation, so you will have missed out, and you'll have to wait until it comes back. This is what makes the economy so unique in Dune Awakening. I'll leave that in its own video. Is unique blueprints may only come around once or twice a month, if that. So you've got to keep your eye open when they come around, because they are limited drops. Next up is the Penetrator. This is a drill shot that has the normal drill shot effect of the common house drill shot, but also applies a bleed damage over time effect, making it, in my opinion, one of the best drill shots in the game. The reason why I don't like the other unique drill shots at tier 6 and tier 5 is they have this sort of ugly, annoying charge up effect that more often than not will get me killed or will make me vulnerable, because when you're charging up the burst drill shots, they also deactivate your shield, giving a free entry for other ranged players to hit you and damage you. That is why the Penetrator is, in my opinion, much better, because it is going to shoot, and when it shoots is when your shield deactivates. There's no charge up. You can actually shoot straight away and apply the bleed as well, which is really, really nice. Next up is the Dart for Every Man. This is a Disruptor SMG, again, one of the best weapons for burning someone's shield, and it's going to be very strong for doing exactly that. It's a unique, and it does a much higher base and shield damage than the commons. Now, there is another unique disruptor you can get that has a slower fire rate, but it fires 2 darts per bullet. But in my opinion, the slower fire rate kind of defeats the purpose, as the fast fire rate is what you need to consistently burn someone's shield So it's up to you. You can try both depending on what you have, but a dart for every man is my personal recommendation. Next up is the ancient way. This is that homing rocket launcher I was talking about at the start. This is going to be your best friend when it comes to anti-aircraft. It is extremely strong. It has a homing function, so you don't have to aim all of your rockets, and it does a significant, and I mean an extreme amount of damage to vehicles. It is very strong in doing so, and it's going to force your enemy into infantry combat because they will be too scared to lose their ornithopter and get stranded in the deep desert. This is what I mean when it is actually very easy to force infantry combat in Dune, especially in the deep desert. People will start to realize how strong anti-aircraft is in this game and will be afraid to actually engage and stay in their ornithopters longer when they need. And why I say this is because an ornithopter rocket module cannot damage a player because of their Holtzman shield. I'm not kidding. When you get hit by a ornithopter rocket pod or rocket module as an infantry, you will literally maybe lose 5 or 7% of your Holtzman shield power. And depending on how high level your power pack is, this was on a power pack Mark 5. A power pack Mark 6 is going to take literally jack shit damage from a rocket module on an ornithopter. So that is why it is very easy to force infantry fights, because while your rocket launcher does significant damage to them, they do little damage to you. So it's going to force them to drop to the ground, pocket their ornithopter in the backup tool so they don't lose it, and effectively engage you in infantry. Next up is the Arrakis Disruptor Pistol. This is more of an optional weapon, but a fun weapon nonetheless. It does the same thing as a normal Disruptor SMG, except in the form of a high power single shot, kind of like a revolver at a shield. So it is very strong at knocking down shields, but it has a very specific use case. Much like the charge up drill shots in the uniques in the game that you might have experienced, this does the same thing. It has to charge up the shot. And when it's charging up the shot, you drop your shield, you drop your Holtzman, which can put you in a vulnerable state. But that is why it's so good as well, is you can pre-fire this and do a significant knock or a significant amount of damage to someone's Holtzman, someone's power supply. So what you can do is you can jiggle peek and hold down the Disruptor Pistol and effectively pre-fire it, and it takes, I think, 2 hits on equivalent tier gear to knock someone's shield. So if you have a Arrakis Disruptor Pistol and you hit someone that has tier 6 gear, 2 shots to knock their shield. On tier 5 armor, it could be, I think, 2 shots. I think it just does 2 shots. But if you use a Disruptor Arrakis Pistol on tier 4, like a tier 4 Holtzman, it is one-shotting their shield down. And again, tier 5, it's 2-shotting, which makes it extremely OP. So if you pre-fire 2 shots, you've instantly made someone vulnerable, and they have to regen their power, they have to regen their Holtzman over the course of like 5 or 7 seconds, which gives you a massive window of opportunity to shoot them with another gun like a Dune Watcher or melee them with a static needle, etc, etc. Next up, the more common stuff is the utility. Of course, Power Pack Mark 6, Holtzman Shield Mark 5. There is no common Holtzman Shield Mark 5. However, there is a unique Holtzman Shield Mark 6, but it is extremely rare, so I did not put that in this build because that is going to be one of the hardest uniques to get in the game. And the only difference with the Holtzman Shield Mark 5 unique is that it reactivates faster. So you know when you shoot and you drop your shield, it is going to simply regenerate or re-enable faster than a Mark 5. And it does do it a little bit faster, but it is not to the point where I would actively recommend needing it over just a Mark 5. They're both fantastic. They're both going to be literally the most required part of your kit to play PvP in this game. Without a Holtzman's shield, you are a dead man. Next up is the full suspensor belt. This is, again, one of the best suspensors in the game. It's only a tier 4, means it's really cheap to craft. They do deplete very fast, as I've started to carry multiple of them on me because of how fast they reset, because of how fast they break. So yeah, full suspensor belt. You're going to be able to fly through the skies. You have really good power sustain with all of the passives we picked up. Really strong as a range player, getting away from melee, of course, and just a really good pickup. Next up for the armor, I highly recommend Heavy and especially the Bulwark set. It offers more ranged and long distance mitigations focused for a playstyle like me, where melee generally won't be as much of a problem as ranged is. It's also important to mention the Bulwark armor has the best dart damage mitigation, but loses again a lot of melee mitigation, which we shouldn't be worrying about. It has increased stamina cost on dashing, which is fine because we have our suspensor dashing from our ability trees. The bulwark set also offers energy damage mitigation, which is great when you're versing someone that's hitting you with plasma cannons and especially las guns when you have your shield dropped. The chest is a separate unique. It is the power harness and gives us 40 additional power on top of what our power pack offers and our passives offer, meaning we get even more power sustain, which is incredibly important for my playstyle, my kit, and just in general, having more power is the best thing in the game. So that is pretty much the entire kit. I know there was a lot going on, a lot of complex systems, also a lot of yapping that you might not understand yet. But just know this is my kit. This is what I'm going to be running with until they add new gear or make significant meta changes. Until then, this is my pretty much my in-game kit that I'm going to be focusing on chasing if I don't already have the gear. Until then, especially if you don't have any of the uniques, I quickly want to mention, if you don't have any of the uniques in this build, use the common versions or any other named item you can get. It doesn't really matter. For example, if you do not have the Dune Watcher Spit Dart at tier 6, you can just use a common tier 6 Jabal Spit Dart. It is still good. It's not as good, but it's still good. At that, I think that is pretty much where I want to wrap up the video. That is all I wanted to put into this. That is the entire build from start to finish, my in-game kit. And again, if there's any changes, I will update you guys. The build page website is going to be in the description if that is something you want to look at, if you prefer referring to text, especially if you want to jump back and see something you might have missed or reference something again in the future. The website is going to be fantastic for that, as you don't have to skip through a video. With that said, that is pretty much the entire build. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.